So while I was preparing my lecture for Sunday, I went reading through an old treatise called the Viveka Drgdrshya. And it's got a lot of consonants in it. It's a treatise on the difference between the seer and the seen. And I enjoyed it because it really kind of gives us a walk through the thinking process that develops a philosophy, or that uncovers the experience of being in a way that really is concise and gives you something to hold on to. So I was just going to read the first 5 introductory shlokas, or verses. Verse 1 says, "The form is perceived, and the I is the perceiver. The I is perceived, and the mind is its perceiver. The mind with its modifications is perceived, and the witness is verily the perceiver. But it, the witness, is not perceived by any other." So it goes through, it just walks you back, right? You're looking at something, and you're seeing it with your eye. Now the eye is being watched by something else. What is that? The mind. It connects directly to the mind. The mind processes that digital information coming from the eye. We'll call it digital. But then the mind is also being watched. And so behind the mind is this watcher. And when you get to the watcher, you can't go any farther. That's the end of the matter. And that is the witness, this eternal witness of all things. And all it does, all you do, is witness the changes at these various levels. Now he goes on and makes another point here. He builds on it. The objects of perception, everything that you're looking at out here, appear as various, right? And lots of distinctions on account of such things as blue, yellow, gross, subtle, short, long, etc. The eye, on the other hand, sees them, itself remaining one and the same. Interesting little notion there. So all of this change that's being perceived is being seen by an eye, your eyeball, which doesn't change as such. The change in the eyeball is not necessary, it's just simply perceiving all of this change. So he goes on and says, such characteristics of the eye as blindness, sharpness, or dullness, the mind is able to cognize. You see, so he takes us on the first one. You see the changing world out there by the eye. The eye itself is not changing because it's a unity. It sort of contains all of the possible changes that it can perceive out there. And now he's saying about the eye itself, such characteristics of the eye such as blindness and sharpness or dullness. The mind is able to cognize those changes because the mind contains the unity that's perceiving the instrument of perception, the eye, which is perceiving the perception, the outer world. So the level of changes that's happening at each level has to be contained within the unity that's perceiving them, the container of that change, as it were. But that change keeps backing up level by level again. So we see that the mind is able to see the changes in the eye, which is able to see the changes in the world. Okay, but they are able to see that because they are a container for it, which means they hold all of the possible options for the change to contain. That's how they can perceive that change. And now he's going to go behind the mind, and he says consciousness illumes all of these other mental states, such as desire, determination, doubt, belief, non-belief, constancy, and its opposite, modesty, understanding, fear, and others, because it, consciousness, is the unity, can see all of the changes of the mind because it itself is the unifying container and must contain all of the possible contortions of mind in order to perceive all of the contortions and changes of mind. And the mind, in turn, is watching the eyeball or looking at the eyeball. And because the mind can contain all of the possible combinations of eyeball, it's able to distinguish the changes in the eye, whether it's in focus or not in focus, whether it's seeing right or not right, and whatnot. And then the eye is perceiving the world and contains within itself all of the possible variations from which it can perceive the changing world. So each level, as it goes up, is perceived by a container which contains all the possibilities of that which it's perceiving, all the way up to the consciousness or the witness, that which is unchanging, and through which all of the changes of all of the other different levels can be perceived. So that's how they arrive at this notion that there is a oneness, a unity, within which all of the machinations of the other can be contained and can be perceived. All of this is pointing us to that overarching unity of the divine, which we might call God.